A new year is approaching. What are your plans for 2013? Are you making any New Year's resolutions? When you're making your list of resolutions, things you're not going to do and things you are going to do, I have a suggestion for your to-do list. Consider adding that in 2013, you will decide to become a better evangelist. I know, that doesn't sound very exciting, does it? Well, don't dismiss me too quickly. I'm not talking about being an evangelist like those televangelists that we see. That might be what comes to mind when you hear the word, but the tradition of being an evangelist goes way back. It goes back to the beginning of the church. The model I want to suggest to be an evangelist is St. John, the writer of this morning's gospel. His complete title is St. John the Evangelist, so we don't confuse him with St. John the Baptist. St. John is our model for evangelism, in other words, not Jimmy Swaggart. St. John gives us a good lesson in his style in this morning's gospel. He begins by telling us, in the beginning was the Word. When John speaks of the Word, he means something quite different from what we mean when we use that term. And for goodness sake, he is not talking about a book. When I hear people say the Word of God and referring to the Bible, I have to grit my teeth. I want to say, have you read the Gospel of John? The Word is very clearly Jesus Christ, not a book. But people talk about it. The Bible is the Word of God anyway. That's not what John meant, though. John is speaking first to his Hebrew audience, for whom the word had a living quality. The Semitic root for word is dabar, which also can mean a thing, an event, or an action. In other words, a word spoken was a happening. Once a word had been uttered, it could not be torn from the event that it evoked. An example. You might remember the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau were the sons of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. And Jacob and Esau were twins, but Esau technically was born first, so he was going to get the birthright. He was going to inherit everything. He was going to get his father's blessing and all of that. Well, it turned out that their mother, Rebekah, favored Jacob over Esau, and so she wanted to make sure that Jacob got the birthright and got the blessing from Isaac. And we're told that Esau was a hairy man, but Jacob was a smooth man. And they meant that in more ways than one. Esau was not terribly bright. Jacob liked to write poetry and was a bit of a shepherd. So one day Esau came out of the woods where he'd been hunting all day, and Jacob was making a pot of stew. And Esau said, "Me hungry, give me stew." And Jacob said, "Well, sure, I'll give you a bowl of stew, brother, but you got to give me your birthright." And Esau said, "Me not care about birthright, give me stew." So he got some stew. So technically, Jacob had tricked Esau out of the birthright. But it had to be official, it had to be approved by dad. So by this time, Isaac's very old and he's blind. And so what Rebekah and Jacob did is they put goat skins on his arms, so he seemed like he had hairy arms. And he went in, speaking in a deep voice, and asked Isaac for the blessing. Isaac said, "Come closer, I'm not sure you're Esau." He reached out, felt the goat skin, and said, "Okay, you're a hairy man, you must be Esau." And he gave the blessing. Well, then, of course, when Esau got home, Esau was going to be really angry, so Jacob had to get out of there, and he had to go live with his uncle Laban in another country, so Esau wouldn't hunt him down. Because, this is the weird part of the story. This is what the whole Devar idea is about. Once Isaac had given the blessing, he couldn't take it back. Once the words have been spoken, they have been spoken. And Jacob became the inheritor. Matter of fact, Jacob becomes the patriarch. Jacob is given a new name. His new name is Israel. He had 12 sons, from which we get the 12 tribes of Israel. By the way, 15 years later, or something like that, Jacob and Esau did finally make up. Just so you know that part of the story too. To the Hebrew people, when God spoke, the words had gone forth, that the blessing had hold. It was a creative act. The word had the ability to change things permanently. All of creation was called into existence in the same way, through the Word of God. God said it, let there be light, and there was light. Now the Hebrew Scriptures celebrate over and over again the power of God's creative action. So it's no wonder when John starts with, in the beginning was the Word. For the Hebrew people, it evokes a lot of memories, a lot of stories. So John reached out to his own people. But that's not the only thing that earned him the title evangelist. He also reached out to the vast Gentile audience that was all around him. They were dominated by Greek thought. And here's where John's brilliance is revealed. As early as 500 BC, Greek philosophers had asked the question of permanence in this reality full of the flux of change. Permanence was defined as resting only in one place, the reason of God. The term they used for that was logos. Logos is the Greek word which is translated into English for us as the Word. So, in using the Word, in using the logos, John was speaking to both the Jewish and the Greek worlds simultaneously. I'm suggesting that that's the kind of evangelist we're called to be today. Those who are eager to be authentic witnesses can learn a lot from John. We have become a bit domesticated and a bit institutionalized in the church. And to some degree, I think we've cut ourselves off and even alienated ourselves from the very people we're called to reach out to with the good news of Jesus Christ. There is no way that we can enter into honest dialogue with these folks, with either the Greeks or the Hebrews of today, if we remain only within our church groups and we insist on using church jargon. You all know what church jargon is, right? Saved by the blood of the Lamb. We all know what that means, but someone who was not raised up in the church, that's an ugly, ugly image. Think about it. Okay, so we have to be really careful. We have to meet people a different way. We meet people where they are in the spiritual life with the gospel message. That means that we can speak their language, we can learn their stories, and we can listen to their lives as we look for opportunities to share the message of the gospel. It's a different world today. I've told you before about the bank executive I met in Starbucks when it was raining really hard, and I made some joke about Noah's Ark, and he said, "What? Who's Noah?" And I said, "You know, the animals 2x2 in the ark." He had never heard the story. A college-educated bank executive in Starbucks had never heard the story of Noah's Ark. It's a different world. So how do we meet people where they are in their spiritual life? One rather absurd example for me was my senior year in seminary. I was sent to a meeting at General Theological Seminary for the student body presidents of the 11 seminaries. And this young lady who was president of the student body of the seminary, which I will not name, her and I went to have a hamburger and a beer at Chelsea Square near the seminary. And I quickly found out she knew nothing of the Bible, nothing of the prayer book, and really wasn't too interested in talking about God. She didn't know any theology. President of the student body. But she kept on asking me questions. She was curious about why I was into all this stuff. And so what I found, the only way I could talk to her of the common language that we had was she knew a lot of philosophy. So I used Plato and Aristotle to explain who I understood Jesus Christ to be. And we had quite the debate because she thought I was really full of it. And so we talked for a couple hours, actually. And we're walking back to the seminary, and she turned to me and said, "Thank you." And I said, "Well, thank you for what?" She said, "Thank you for introducing me to Jesus Christ. I'd never met him before." Wow. Student body president of a seminary, which I will not name, had never met Jesus Christ before. And we were able to do it without talking about the Bible, without talking about theology, by arguing philosophy. Who would have thought? My point is that sometimes we have to really listen to the other person and see where they are and meet them there with the good news. During 2013, let us adopt St. John the Evangelist as one of our models. and proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ in new and innovative ways. May the joy of this Christmas season compel us to share our good news that the Word has become flesh and dwells among us. Amen.
Amen.